shine within our hearts, loving Master, the pure light of your divine knowledge, and open the eyes of our minds to understand the message of your gospel. Instill in us also the reverence for your blessed commandments, so that putting down all sinful desires, we may pursue a spiritual life, thinking and doing all those things that are well pleasing to you. For you are blessed, together beginning with Father, and your all holy good life creating Spirit, now and forever, into the ages of ages. All right, so can anyone tell me what we discussed last week? There was a lot going on last week. Anybody? We talked.
About Jesus as Father, the church, the believers.
What kind of unity is that? What kind of unity are we talking about? Because that phraseology was used a lot. What was the phrase that Jesus Christ used repeatedly in this chapter?
They might be one.
That they may be one as
I am the Father.
as I and the Father are one. That they may be one even as we are one. What did that mean? Why did he say that so many times, and what did that mean?
Well, they emphasize the Trinity.
It was emphasizing the Trinity as one, but one how? Why is it one? And how is it possible for us to be one as they are one? Are we God? Are we able to be the Godhead? How are we supposed to be one as they are one? What kind of oneness is he emphasizing?
One another. We're one body.
One body in perfect agreement and love. So the oneness that Jesus Christ is referring to is the love that he and the Father have for one another, along with the Holy Spirit, that we are called to have that same type of love, that we are called to be one just as they are one. And so we have this concept of separation, because he says this a couple of times too, that they are in the world, but not of the world. What does that mean? What does it mean that they are not of the world? They're in the world, but not of the world. I know might be, these might seem like technicalities, but there's a reason why I keep going back to these phrases in previous chapters, because this is very, very critical to our understanding of our place as Christians in the world itself. In the world, but not of the world. Which means that we're called to be what?
Like God?
Like God. And like God is not of the world, because he says, just as I am not of the world. What does that phrase mean, not of the world? What common phrase do we say a lot in church that essentially that's what it means?
Holy.
Holy. Because what does holy mean?
Not of this world.
Not of this world. So we are called to be holy. So when Jesus Christ is praying for the disciples, he's praying for the holy people of God, the people that have cut themselves off from the world, in the world still, but not of the world, not influenced by the world. After he said this prayer and he prayed for all of the world, what happened next? Where did he go?
Got arrested and went to the cross.
He got arrested, but what happened during his arrest? What was strange about his arrest?
Oh, that they didn't know him. He had to say, "I am the one that you're looking for."
Correct. And when he said, "I am he," what was he essentially saying?
I am God.
I'm God. Hence why they got down on the face, but they didn't recognize him. Why couldn't they recognize him? And what does that have to do with the themes of the Gospel of John? That they could not recognize Jesus.
Until you open your heart to it, you can't see it. Kind of like the apostles on the path after the resurrection.
To an extent, but not like that. Their eyes were not recognized yet because they were still clouded. These people's eyes are not just clouded, they are full of what?
Hate.
Hate, and by extension, what was in the gospel passage this past Sunday? The eyes are the lamp of the body, and if they are full of what? Darkness. So in other words, they are full of darkness. And this harkens back to the beginning of Gospel of John, in which John says of Jesus Christ, the darkness saw the light and did not understand it and could not overcome it. What this also shows us that unless Jesus Christ acquiesced, unless he allowed himself to be captured, he was not going to be captured. He would not have been arrested. They could not do anything to him. Even with Judas right there, it shows us that Jesus Christ is in control. What further action shows us that Jesus Christ is in control? What did he... I'm hearing the 20-second delay from YouTube or Facebook. What happened in Jesus Christ? What happened to Jesus? Jesus Christ was arrested, and what did Peter immediately do?
Oh, cut his ear. Cut the soldier's ear.
Not the soldier, the servant of the high priest, Malchus. And what did Jesus do?
Yeah.
Healed it.
He healed Malchus. And what did he say to Peter?
Put your sword back.
Put your sword back in its sheath. He who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. In other words, violence begets violence. And Lord, is that true today? Violence begets more violence, begets more violence. So the only way to stop the violence is how? Love. Sacrificial love. So Jesus Christ...
People don't. But God. I mean, like with Saint Constantine, things like that. It was wars.
Yeah, and St. Constantine didn't get baptized until his deathbed. What does that tell you?
Yeah, but when he saw the cross by this symbol conquer.
Yeah, which means that he recognized that Christ was God. He recognized that that this was the true religion. This is one of the reasons why he sent his mother to the Holy Lands to build those churches, for her to find the one true cross. This is why he convened the First Ecumenical Council, so that all of Christendom could be united in the empire. But he himself was not baptized until his death.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
He didn't feel himself worthy.
It's not just that he didn't feel himself worthy. He recognized that the actions he had to take as emperor were not Christian. He felt in himself that it would be a hypocrite if he was to espouse and take the baptism and then do the things of war and the things that he would have to do as a politician as emperor. Now, as Christians, we look at that and we would say he was wrong. He should have become a Christian, because that tact of, well, I'll convert on my deathbed or I'll repent on my deathbed, you don't know that you're going to have that.
Yeah, like the luxury of yeah.
So we would say that Constantine was wrong in that action, St. Constantine. But what we're seeing is his extreme love for Christianity was that he felt that you could not be an emperor and a Christian, that it was like diametrically opposed. So this is why we look at these things and we would say that these things sometimes are necessary evils, but they're evils all the same. So Jesus Christ is showing us through his divine example that the only way to stop this bloodshed, to stop these attacks, is with love and sacrifice. Now, let's get back to that. So we're going to continue with verse 12 of chapter 18. Then the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. Steel drum. And they led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Now, if we recall earlier, what was that about? When Caiaphas said, I have had a vision that this man must die, not just for Jerusalem, but for all of the Jews, for all people. What did that mean? First, what did he think it meant, and then what did it actually mean?
But meant that he died on the cross, so I'm sure that meant
Well, yes, it meant that by his death he was going to save all people.
Were they worried about the Romans coming in?
Correct. That was what Caiaphas thought it meant. He thought that because Jesus Christ was going to be seen as the king, that this was going to bring the Romans down on them. That was going to cause the Romans to wipe out the Jews and take over Jerusalem. Now, of course, 40 years later, what happened anyway? The temple was destroyed. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Now, when it says so did another disciple, who is that other disciple?
John.
John. Now, this is a literary device that is used by authors during this period where when they're talking about themselves, they don't say it was me. They say that it was someone else. Or they'll use an epithet to describe the person when they're really talking about themselves. We saw that yesterday in the epistle of St. Paul, in which he was talking about his journey into the three heavens. But he says, I won't boast, but I'll boast in this man. He was talking about himself without talking about himself. Now that disciple was known to the high priest and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. So that means that John the theologian was known. And of course, given that he was Jesus Christ's favorite disciple, what does that mean? Meant that John was almost like a puppy. He followed Jesus everywhere. So everyone would have known, oh yeah, there's Jesus and there's John. Because John loved Jesus so much, so he was always there, always present. The fact that we see in the Last Supper that John is leaning close to Jesus Christ, he had his head on his breast to ask him, who is going to betray you, shows the kind of relationship that John the theologian had with Jesus Christ. So everyone knew wherever Jesus went, there was John. So John was allowed to go inside. But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to her who kept the door and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, you are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I am not. So Peter is having a crisis right now. He's having a moment of doubt in himself and in his faith because he wants to be with Jesus. He wants to be present in the house of the high priest while Jesus' fate is being decided. And he has John make it so that he can get inside. But the second he's walking into the threshold, he's asked, are you one of his disciples? And how did he respond? No. Now, this is very, very important for us because what did Peter say earlier?
Die with Christ?
Yeah, I'll die with you. I will never betray you. I will never betray you. Even if everyone falls away, I will never do it. Now, why is that important to us?
Because Christ, Jesus forgives him.
It's not just because Jesus forgives him, but it's important for us because so many times we make declarations. We make positives about ourselves. Well, I am a good Christian. I would never deny Christ. I would always do the right thing. Peter is the leader of the disciples. On this rock I will build my church. But what are we seeing right now? We're seeing him and his faith crash.
Human failure.
Exactly, human failure. We are all failures. All of us. This is extremely important for us to understand that all of our leaders, all of our pastors, bishops, leaders within the church. We're all fallen people. We're all sinners. The only one who is sinless is Christ. And that when we make statements like this, that I am not going to fall away, I will always be true, doesn't always come to be. Sometimes we get tested and we fall short. And as we're going to see with Peter, he doesn't fall just once, but he falls repeatedly. Now the servants and the officers who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. The high priest then asked Jesus about his disciples and his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where the Jews always meet, and in secret I have said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. Now, why is Jesus Christ doing this? Why is he saying, ask other people to give an account of me? It's not just for the prophecies that they're going to lie about him. It's the idea that Jesus Christ was open and transparent. Nothing that he said was secret. Nothing that he said was seditious. Even the moments he had with his disciples were not contrary to what he said openly. He just explained himself more to the disciples so that they could understand better. But it wasn't like he had some secret doctrine with the disciples and then another doctrine with the people. He just explained himself more to the disciples so that they could get it, because the people didn't understand. The Orthodox Study Bible says, the questioning of the high priest tries to uncover subversive activity that would not only violate the law of Moses, but be reason enough to accuse Jesus of a political crime before Pilate. Note the 2 points of question put to Jesus concern his disciple and his doctrine, 2 essential components of Christ in his church. So in other words, everything that Jesus Christ talks about is for the church. It's open. It's not limited to one person. This is another important thing to note about the leadership and the role of the church. To understand that the church is not the church because of one person, but because of the equality and the community and the combined truth altogether. That there is not disagreement. Remember that they may be one as we are one. And when he had said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Do you answer the high priest like that? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? Now, this is very, very important. Because what did Jesus Christ say about when people strike you? Turn the other cheek. Which means that you're supposed to basically bear the burdens of other people. But when Jesus Christ is actually struck in the face, what did he do? He questioned it. He said, why did you hit me, essentially? If I'm lying, if I'm doing ill, fine. But if I'm not, then why did you hit me? This is also to show us that although we are supposed to give the other cheek for the sake of other people, and Jesus Christ doesn't just give the other cheek, he gives his whole self. It's to show us that we're not to be doormats. It doesn't mean that we're just supposed to be abused. It means that we are supposed to be able to think for ourselves and to say, okay, it's one thing to take the beatings for another person to know what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that you just have to sit there and take abuse. This is very, very important within family situations and within friend situations. That Jesus Christ is not telling you to be, an abused person. Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him, You are not one of his disciples, are you? He denied and said, I'm not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter then denied again, and immediately the rooster crowed. Now, this is where Peter has his moment. Now, in the Synoptic Gospels, it gives even more details of these moments. In fact, if you read the Synoptic Gospels and the Gospel of John, it almost looks like Peter's denying Jesus all over the place because it's to multiple different situations. But what's important is that in this moment when the rooster crowed, Peter recognizes that Jesus said this would happen. He said, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And it says that in the Synoptic Gospels, and Peter wept bitterly for his denial. So he recognized that he had failed. He had betrayed Christ. Which meant that in this moment, he was no different than Judas. Now, later on in this gospel, we'll see how both men react to this, how they both treat their betrayals, how Judas does and how Peter does. They both betrayed Christ, but one is going to do one thing and one is going to do another thing. So let's keep going. Verse 28. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early morning. But they themselves did not go in the praetorium, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, what accusation do you bring against this man? For verse 28, St. John Chrysostom notes the irony that Christ's accusers did not fear being defiled by condemning an innocent man to death, but would not set foot into a court of justice. But this kind of goes into the deeper problem of the Pharisaical approach, which is, you're legalistically looking at the words without recognizing the spirit of the law. They're defiling their souls by condemning an innocent man, but because they're not going into the Gentile courts, they're not defiled. Huh? Instruments, yes. That's a tuba. Tuba. Yeah, last week it was numbers, this week it's instruments. They answered and said to him, if he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Then Pilate said to him, you take him and judge him according to your law. Guitar. Therefore the Jews said to him, it is not law for us to put anyone to death. That the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, he spoke, signifying by what death he would die. Now, Jews have killed people before. They've stoned people before. In fact, they're going to stone Stephen shortly after this. So what's going on here? Why are they saying it's not lawful for us to put anyone to death?
Because the Passover?
Nope.
They can't crucify.
No, it's not because they want to crucify him, although they'd love it. The whole point here is they're trying to keep it out of their hands because the people love Jesus. So if they can get the Romans to kill Jesus, then it looks like, oh well, he was trying to make a political empire and he was killed by the Romans. It's also trying to make to pay lip service to the Romans, because technically the Jews are not allowed to basically execute authority with life and death. They're not to put people to death. They don't have that authority. So technically they shouldn't be putting anyone to death. It should always be brought to the Romans to make the decision, does this person need to be executed? But because they're trying to get Jesus Christ executed as an enemy of the state, they are for sure bringing him to Pontius Pilate. And this also signifies by what death Jesus would die, because how do political enemies of the state get executed? Crucifixion. This was the difference between, for example, Peter and Paul, who were both executed, but Peter was crucified because he was a Galilean, he was a Jew. How was Paul executed? He was beheaded. That was a right left for Romans, because beheading would be considered a more humane way to die. because it's, a simple moment and then it's done, as opposed to crucifixion, which could last days, if not weeks. Arguably one of the most painful, horrible ways to die. Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me?" So what is this telling us, this little dialogue right here? For Pontius Pilate had asked Jesus Christ that means that the Caiaphas and all the Jews, when they came, they said, "This is why we're bringing him to you. He's making himself to be king of the Jews. He's riling up the people, and so therefore he needs to die." So that's why Pontius Pilate is asking Jesus Christ, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate answered him, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?" Now, why is Pontius Pilate even there? Where are we right now, by the way? Physically. We're in the praetorium, we're in the place called Gabbatha, but where is that? What city? Jerusalem. We're in Jerusalem. Comparatively speaking, Jerusalem or Caesarea, which city is bigger?
Caesarea.
Caesarea. Jerusalem is like a suburb compared to Chicago, let's say a suburb of Chicago versus Chicago itself. That's the difference between Caesarea and Jerusalem. Now, Caesarea is called Caesarea because it's named after who?
Caesar.
Caesar, which means that it is the main area. It's got the stamp, the mark of approval of the Roman Empire. It's the main town in that region. So where 9 times out of 10, in fact, 99 times out of 100, would Pontius Pilate have been?
Caesarea.
Caesarea. Now, history check. Why is he there now? Why is he in Jerusalem right now?
Because of the unrest.
Because of the unrest. First of all, it's a high feast, the Passover. So he's there to basically be, okay, yes, I'm the state and I'm here during your big celebration. But it's more to the fact that he is there because there have been so many riots and unrest in Jerusalem that basically if they do it one more time, he's getting removed and someone else is going to come in. And when that next person comes in, it's going to be disaster for everyone. So he's there to try to keep the peace. He's also there to try to basically be representative of the state during their high feast. So that's why Pontius Pilate is in Jerusalem at all. I mean, when we read these things, we think to ourselves, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, this big major city. Well, it's not. It's a minor city. It's a minor town compared to everything around it. So Pontius Pilate is saying, am I a Jew? In other words, your dealings, what you're doing, this means nothing to me. This has no bearing on my life. I am a Roman governor. I've been assigned to this podunk town, Jerusalem, and you're asking me these things? What did you do? What did you do to get these people riled up that they want to kill you? Is what he's essentially asking. Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. What is Jesus talking about? What does he mean that my servants would not have let this happen to me? Who are... I'm sorry?
He had asked the servants to defend him or to fight, they would have fought because they followed him. But his world, his realm was not the kingdom of the Jews. It was heaven.
Exactly right, Steve. His kingdom is not what the Jews think it is. They kept thinking that he's some sort of worldly king, but he's not. When we start the divine liturgy, we say, "Blessed is the kingdom." This is where we're talking about the kingdom. And the kingdom is comprised of all of the saints and all of the angels. So if Jesus Christ, now obviously we're looking at something in a silly way, but if Jesus Christ had so desired, not only would he have destroyed the armies or whatever the Jews had, but the whole planet, the whole universe could have been destroyed by the armies of Jesus. So he's speaking very factually, my kingdom is not of this world. In other words, I have been delivered easily into the Jews' hands, so I don't have anybody with me right now. And this continues the tit for tat. Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And then, when he said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him at all." Now, the Orthodox Study Bible says a couple of things. Regarding verse 35, it is unheard of that the accused would have to name the charges against himself in any court, since the captors would be the ones to name the crime. That Pilate has to ask Jesus what the charges are shows the chief priest could name no crime he might have committed. And more importantly, it shows Jesus was Lord over the events of his death, for even the governor has to come to him in order for the trial to proceed. Regarding 38 through 40, though Pilate knows Christ to be innocent of any crime, he attempts to strike a compromise with the Jews by declaring Christ guilty, but freeing him on account of the Passover. Thus the chief priest would have an official declaration of guilt, and Christ would not be unjustly punished. So Pontius Pilate sees that Jesus Christ is innocent. He's done no crime. And so he's not dumb. He's figured it out. Why are the Jews doing this?
Oh, he's a threat to the Jewish hierarchy.
Because they're jealous of him. He recognizes they're doing this out of jealousy. They're trying to put a man to death because they're jealous. This has nothing to do with Caesar, Rome, or me. This man wants to talk about a heavenly kingdom. Whatever. It doesn't matter to me. So when he says, "I find no fault in him," he's basically saying, I can't kill this man for having done nothing wrong. What am I supposed to say? What crime has he actually committed? He hasn't committed a crime. He has not declared himself against Caesar. He has not come into Jerusalem saying, "Now we will cast out the Romans." He hasn't done any of that. There's no crime that he can be accused of. So Pilate continues, "But you have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you therefore want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" Then they all cried again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. Now, this is a shorter version than what we see in some of the Synoptic Gospels. Barabbas was a freedom fighter, but he was also a brutal man. Absolutely brutal. And so he was notorious. He wasn't liked by anybody. So when Pilate is offering Jesus or the Barabbas, he's trying to make it easy for the people to say, well, whether you believe in Jesus or not, this is probably a better choice. But they were riled up to choose Barabbas. Now, Jesus is being mocked here as the king of the Jews by Pilate. Why is he doing that? Why is he being called king of the Jews?
Because they're not understanding what he meant when he called himself king. They're confusing earthly kingship.
That's the Israelites. Pontius Pilate's being deliberate, though. He knows what he's saying when he's calling him king of the Jews. He's using it to mock them. when he executes Jesus Christ as King of the Jews, he knows that Jesus Christ is not declaring himself to be King of the Jews. And he knows that it's a trumped up charge against Jesus Christ to be called King of the Jews. He is calling him King of the Jews to basically mock the Jewish leadership, to say, you're the ones that are saying this. He isn't saying this. I'm not saying this. But I'm going to say it here to mock you and mock him, because all of you are beneath me. This is the reality, too, that when we look at the stories of the Passover and the Passion, most people take a sympathetic ear to Pontius Pilate and think, oh, he didn't want to kill Jesus. He must have been a nice guy. But if you actually look at the history books, Pilate was horrible. He was exceptionally cruel and terrible to people. And one of the reasons why he was in trouble was because his rule was so cruel that people were rioting under him because they were so upset with him. And that's why he was kind of upset. It's like, all right, I'm kind of on my last rope here, because I've basically allowed riots to happen under my watch because I've been kind of not good at this job. And that's why he's trying to assuage the situation. In normal circumstances, he wouldn't have done that. He would have just done what he wanted. But because he's in trouble and because he's under the gun, he's trying to make peace with these Jewish leaders. But just because he is forced to not do what he would normally do, it's not going to let him not take the opportunity to mock them. So he decides to try to make a happy medium, and says, in the other Gospels, he says, first he scourges him, then he condemns him to be crucified. But the happy medium here is he's going to scourge Jesus so that he can ostensibly punish him for the Jewish people, but not put him to death. Now, of course, this is 6 of one, half a dozen the other, because a lot of times when someone was scourged, what would happen to them?
Die.
They die. Because what does it mean to be scourged? To be whipped. And this is where they basically have like a cat o' nine tails with barbs of stone and bone, and they lash at you. This is one of the reasons why we're going to get to it, why Jesus Christ could not carry his cross very far, because scourging was so horrible that oftentimes if you survived, you probably wouldn't be walking for days. It was absolutely horrific. It was not just a simple whipping. And because of that, the post where he was scourged is in 3 different places. It's in Constantinople, Jerusalem, and Rome. And it is, of course, a source of miracles now, because it was where Jesus Christ gave his back to the lashings for our sake. So we'll continue with the start of chapter 19. So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and they struck him with their hands. So this is extreme mocking. They're putting royal clothes on him. They're putting a crown of thorns, which, if you've seen the thorns that are in Jerusalem, they're not like the small little, which would scratch and hurt a lot, but we're talking about those big, long barbed thorns that rip into your face. So, I mean, this is extremely painful, and the mocking that he is being given by the Roman soldiers is absolutely brutal. And then they brought him out. And he said, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." So in other words, he has scourged Jesus, he has mocked Jesus. By any rights, most people would say, okay, whoa, wow, enough. That was brutal. Maybe we went too far. Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and a purple robe, and Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Now, this statement, "Behold the man," is very, very important, because if we look to the first psalm, how does it begin? Psalm 1. The very first psalm. No,
No.
nope. That's not Psalm 1. Psalm 1 begins, "Blessed is the man, Makarios Oanir," which is what Jesus Christ also said in his Beatitudes within the Gospel of Matthew. Behold the man, the one true man, the real human being. Behold humanity. So this is almost like a triple entendre in the sense that look what man has done to another man, how we brutalized Jesus Christ. But also look at what a real human being is. Because Jesus Christ is taking our humanity unto himself to change it to save us. So you would think, after seeing Jesus Christ brutalized to this extreme extent, rivulets of blood pouring off him, shaking because he can barely stand, if he's standing at all without the support of the Romans holding him up. Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him," to show the level of darkness that had come into them. Pilate said to them, "You take him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was more afraid, and went again into the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Why is Pilate afraid?
Didn't his wife have a dream?
She
They
did.
told him about a dream.
She did. She had a dream saying, "Have nothing to do with this righteous man." So there's all these things telling Pilate, beware. You're dealing with something bigger than you know. And so when Pilate heard that Jesus Christ made himself out to be like God, because prior to this, when Jesus Christ was saying, "My kingdom is not of this world. All who hear me, hear the truth." You know what Pilate probably thought? This guy's nuts, but he's harmless. So what are they doing to him? Why are they doing this to him? But when he heard that they're putting him to death because he is calling himself the Son of God, well, now we're looking at something possibly dangerous, possibly something that is huge. And Jesus isn't answering him. Jesus did not say a word when Pilate asked him, "Where are you from?" Then Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you?" So in other words, Pilate is saying, I've got authority. Why are you acting hard on me when I can release you? I can give you your life back. Or, if I so choose, I can crucify you. I hold all of the power. I am the Roman governor here. Jesus answered, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." So in other words, Jesus is telling him, you have the authority to do these things because it was given to you from your superiors. And so you're basically having to execute the law as it's given to you. Therefore, it's not on you, but on them who brought me to you that the real sin lies. So in other words, Jesus is saying this really isn't up to you. This really isn't your call. Pilate again took Christ, according to the Orthodox Study Bible. The chief priests finally revealed that their true charge against Christ is blasphemy, which was not a crime under Roman law. According to Jewish law, however, it deserved death. Under Roman law, the Jewish leaders could not put anyone to death. Since Pilate alone had the power to enforce the death penalty, he had to be given a serious political accusation. Therefore, the Jews changed their charge from blasphemy to treason, saying Jesus speaks against Caesar. Pilate again looks to Christ to give him a way to avoid having to condemn him. Once more, this shows Jesus is the true Lord of the events taking place. a truth Jesus states with perfect clarity. Since Pilate had been given authority from above, he shares in the sin of condemning Jesus. However, as he had no previous knowledge of Christ, nor was he a Jew with the advantage of the law and the prophets, Pilate's sin was less. While the one who delivered Christ can refer either to Judas or to Caiaphas, it also refers to all mankind. For all of us sin against Christ, and thus all of us have participated in delivering him to the cross. So, this is a very heavy, weighty thing that is happening here. From then on, verse 12, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." So, they're backpedaling here. They're going again back to this idea of political king. Well, you're against Caesar then because he says he's a king. Well, no, he hasn't done that. He hasn't said anything like that. And so Pontius Pilate knows this is all a charade. This is all parlor tricks to try to make him do what they want him to do. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, at about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." So he's mocking them again. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him." It should be known, this moment, these same people that are saying, away with him, crucify him, what were they saying just a few days ago? Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So what are we seeing about humanity and people in general?
They're easily swayed.
Yeah. We're like cattle. 1 minute we're happy, 1 minute we're sad, 1 minute we're good, 1 minute we're upset. It is so easy to start a riot. It is so easy to get people to feel a certain way because they're not thinking. Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" Again, he's riling them up because he knows what's going on. So since he doesn't have any ability to change it, he's basically going to mock them the whole way through. The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to them to be crucified. Then they took Jesus and led him away. Now, Pontius Pilate technically wrote the death sentence. He's the one that had to execute authority for Jesus Christ to be crucified. But he did it in such a way saying, "Behold your king, shall I crucify your king?" He didn't do this as a way of saying, "He's your king. Are you sure you want to kill him?" He was doing it to basically rub their noses in it. You don't have a king. You don't have any power. I have the power. Rome has the power. And I'm going to execute anyone you think has that kind of authority, which is what they wanted anyway. But he's doing it knowing that they know that he's not doing that. This is about jealousy. This is about their petty squabble. If they want to pretend that, he's God or not God, it really has no bearing on him. He's doing this to show his authority. So the crucifixion, verse 17. "And he, bearing his cross, went out to a place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified and 2 others with him, one on either side and Jesus in the center." Now, of course, we're skipping ahead a little bit because Simon of Cyrene ended up carrying his cross. Why did Simon of Cyrene have to carry his cross?
Jesus was too weak to carry it.
He was too weak. After being scourged, he was brutalized. He was beaten down. There was no way he could carry his cross. In fact, if we look at movies, it seems like Jesus carried his cross for miles and miles and miles. When the reality is that he maybe made it 25 yards before he collapsed. I mean, he's carrying a heavy, heavy piece of wood, like a railroad tie, basically, and he is just been scourged. There's no way that he can do it. So someone else has to carry the cross for him. Now, why is that important to us, by the way? I know it's not in the Gospel of John, but why would that be important that someone helped Jesus Christ carry his cross? Especially when Jesus Christ has told us, pick up your cross and follow me.
Well, it shows that he has followers. You know, even though the high priest are against, there are people who still follow him.
Yes, but what does that have to do with you?
Well, I feel that Jesus helps us carry our cross.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so we need to help him.
It's showing us that even Christ himself had someone help him carry his cross. No one is carrying their cross alone, not even Christ. So none of us are alone. People are there to help us carry our burden. And that's important for us, to show that we all need that help. And that Christ himself shows us he needed the help. Now, Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Then many of the Jews read this title, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Therefore the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, do not write the King of the Jews. But he said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. In other words, what is Pilate saying by that? He's putting them down. But more than that, he's essentially telling the high priest, I'm not giving you that satisfaction. I'm not going to give you the ability to put this final lie on this man and say he said he was King of the Jews. He never said that. It never came up. So you are basically forcing my hand to kill him to prevent a riot. But I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. I'm writing it as I want to write it. I'm killing the King of the Jews.
And isn't he also saying that if we're fighting to kill the King of the Jews, you all better watch out?
It is. It's a brutal it's a brutal saying to show I've got the authority again. If you step out of line, I will kill you all. I'm doing you this nicety. Don't push me further. Because yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. Well, I was going to say when it says, but he said, I am the King of the Jews. Who is he?
Christ. The Jews are the high priests are trying to say, don't put he is King of the Jews. Put he said I am King of the Jews.
Oh, I see. They want him to say he said I'm king, not just I am king. Because I thought they were saying, like was Caius saying, he's the king of the Jews?
In other words, what they're trying to say is that Jesus Christ is being executed because he said he's King of the Jews. But that's not what Pilate put. He put the King of the Jews, which means that he is the King of the Jews, and I'm executing him for it.
Okay.
So it's a very vicious turn of phrase on the high priest and the Jewish leadership. So instead of taking away Jesus' authority, it's as if giving him more authority. Because Pilate, again, he's not an idiot. He knows why they did this, that they're jealous of him. And so he is executing them because they forced his hand, but he is executing him as the King of the Jews, not under a false pretense of, oh, he said he was King of the Jews. Because they even tipped their hand when talking to Pilate and said, well, he uttered blasphemy, that's why he's killing. It's like, okay, so this is what this is all about. This has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with an insurrection. You are just trying to kill a man because he doesn't agree with your political or ideological or religiosity whatsoever. I'm not for that. That's why he kept trying to get Jesus released, because he understood that they were trying to kill, in his mind, until towards the end, something that was probably crazy, but not worth putting to death. So he's not happy about what happened. And so that's why he said, what is written is what is written. Then the soldiers who had crucified Jesus took his garments and made 4 parts, to each soldier a part, and also a tunic. Now the tunic was without seam, woven from the top in one piece. They said therefore among themselves, let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, that the scriptures might be fulfilled, that which says, they divided my garments among them, for my clothing they cast lots. Therefore the soldiers did these things. Now, that verse, that scripture, what psalm is that from? Which is also called what?
Psalm about Jesus, the whole psalm about Jesus.
Exactly, it's the cavalry psalm. And how did that psalm begin? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Which is a subtle nod, we're not even there yet, but to show us, pay attention. That psalm is coming true. It starts off with my God, but it ends with the glory and the power. Now, the Orthodox Study Bible says, the tunic is interpreted as representing Christ's body in 2 ways. That it is woven from the top shows Christ came down from heaven. That it is without seam, it is a sign of the unity of the church. So we're going to stop here before we get to one of my favorite parts regarding John the Theologian and the Virgin Mary. Any questions, comments, or thoughts?
Father, I have some questions.
Yes.
So this crime against, this crime that Jesus supposedly committed was a challenging of secular authority, right? That he was he said he was like higher than Caesar.
Well, that's what they're trying to accuse him of, but that's
what I'm saying.
and
right.
Pilate knows that's false.
Okay. Did the Romans have any sort of religion? I mean, did they have some religious belief?
They believed in the idols, so Zeus, Jupiter, those things. But even then, they were looking at also as like the emperor was sometimes considered divine. I mean,
Yes. Okay. Okay. So they didn't. Okay. So Jesus was not challenging any already established religious beliefs that they had. I mean, in their mind.
well, I mean, he was, but they would have considered, okay, they're not part of us. They're not Romans. They've got their weird religions, but they're our citizens, our vassals. And so their religion was not, a type of religion that was making them enemies of the state, which would have been problematic for them. Obviously, we see that within Christianity later. That's the case, but in this particular case, there was nothing there to say that that Christ was planning an insurrection against the Romans. So this was basically a farce from start to finish, as far as Pontius Pilate was concerned, because he recognized that Jesus Christ had committed no law that could be done. In fact, Jesus Christ also earlier in this chapter, he said, I spoke openly. And what did he say regarding Caesar? Because they tried to trick him even before this. How did they try to trick Jesus Christ regarding Caesar? They gave him some coins and said, exactly, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and the things that are God, the things that are God. In other words, I'm not telling you not to pay your taxes. And in the other letters, it says, do what the government tells you to do. This was prior to Christianity becoming the state religion. And Christianity from the very beginning, and Christ's teaching basically said, do your civic duty, obey. So Jesus Christ was never advocating for political insurrection.
Okay, so now let's of course, a big controversy in the world, not just is who was it that killed Christ? Who's really responsible? I mean,
The Orthodox answer would be,
under Pontius Pilate.
and this is one of the reasons why in the cavalry psalm we see it says that the dogs and the where was it? Let me flip to it real quick. But it basically talks about the idea that we're all guilty. The Jews brought Jesus Christ with false charges to Pilate, so they're guilty. Pilate executed a man he knew he was innocent, so he's guilty. And we, by extension, as human beings, allowing this to happen under our watch, are guilty. So all of us, technically, are guilty of what happened. So you can't lay it only on the Jews, although some Christians try to do that, because obviously there's the line that says, his blood be on our children's children's children. 4? Where is it?
So what I learned today, Father, is that it's a good idea to be doing this with the Orthodox Study Bible in hand.
Oh, for sure.
I got up during our lesson to go fetch it.
Yeah, the notes that are in there, especially the quotations from the church fathers, are extremely important and extremely helpful.
Very illuminating.
Because the reality is that if we look at Scripture, any of us can take any kind of meaning we want out of it. And that's not necessarily helpful or accurate. What's important for proper hermeneutics is to recognize the historical context it was written, the author that wrote it, the audience for whom it was written, and also, overarching, what spiritual reality is trying to be conveyed here. So it's very, very important that line by line, scripture by scripture, we look at these things. And the Orthodox study about the Old and New Testament. I do not recommend the one that is only the New Testament. There are some things that are not correct in there. But the one that is the Old and New Testament is very, very good.
That's the one you gave to Sam for his graduation.
Yes. Any other thoughts before we close?
So next time we're doing
So next time we
19 and 20. Huh?
yes. Yeah, we'll for sure finish 19 and we'll get into 20. Hope everybody is enjoying the Bible study. We are getting into the meat of the Passion. And it's for a lot of our spirituality.
Yeah.
God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And hopefully for some of you, we'll see you in church sooner than later. God bless.
Bye, Mr. Tobias.
Hi.